In this video, I'm going to show you how I framed walls on this porch to create this living space, so stick around. I started by designing the wall framing plan, and in it I included important details such as spacing of the windows and structural considerations. I decided to frame these walls in place stick by stick using 2x6 lumber. To start, I needed to measure and cut the floor plate for the first wall. I then placed the pressure-treated 2x6 on top of the concrete anchor bolts and tapped over the bolts with a hammer to make indentions and identify where holes needed to be drilled. The bolts were a 1/2 inch in diameter, but I drilled holes 5/8 of an inch to allow for some slight adjustments if needed. Then I applied a foam seal barrier using a staple gun. Once I had the board positioned in place, I secured it with galvanized washers and nuts. I repeated this process for the wall plates on the remaining 2 walls. Next, I placed my 2x4 top plate adjacent to the floor plate to mark out stud locations. With my framing plans nearby, I began to draw lines to mark the 2x6 locations. I would mark with an X to denote a full-length stud location. Then I measured for the edge of the window opening and marked locations for the full stud and jack stud. I measured and located the other edge of the window opening and identified the 2 perimeter wall studs. Now I can mark out the remaining wall studs on a 16-inch on-center layout for proper structure and fastening considerations. The small studs that would go underneath the window I denoted as cripple studs. Now I continued this layout for the remaining walls as well. I used 2x4s as top plates to match the width of the beams I'd be tying the new walls into. I used several 3-inch stainless steel screws to attach the top plates to the existing beams. For the first wall, to begin adding studs, I had to measure the height of each stud location, as each stud would be a different length due to the pitch in the roof beams. Since I was using 2x6 lumber for the new walls and the existing beam was the width of a 2x4, I had to bump out around the beams, and I did this by notching the wall studs. I went ahead and cut and loose fitted all the primary studs. Next, I measured and cut the header for the window opening. Now this was not a true header, as the roof beam was serving the structural load here. This was mainly to frame out the window opening. I used a 2x6 here and attached it in place with screws. To compensate for the pitch in the roof beam, I had to aggressively shim out the header to keep it level. I secured the window jack studs in place first using 3-inch stainless steel screws, toenailing into place. I next attached the king studs, securing them into the top and bottom plate with screws, as well as into the jack studs. I then placed the remaining wall studs. For the opposite wall, I repeated this process, measuring each stud length individually and cutting each stud to the proper length. This wall had 3 smaller windows, so I placed the window king studs first, and then placed and secured the window jack studs. Now this last wall would be primarily a large sliding glass door, but was framed in a similar fashion as the other walls. Full studs were placed at the perimeter of the window rough opening. A framing header was placed between those studs, and then an additional stud was added to each side to beef up the door framing.
Now you can see when I got the board lined up here, it's bowed out. I need to somehow bow it back in. So I'm going to show you a little trick how I do that. I put a screw in this board. About that far down, and get a screw started on this side. And that, then basically I'm going to take my hammer and prime it like that. Makes it nice and flush. And there you go, nice and level.
Finally, notch cripple studs were added at 16-inch on center above the header. Here is a look at the completed framing. I came back and added some fire blocking to prevent any drafts into the attic and backing blocks to provide additional structure to fasten the sheathing to. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if it was helpful, why not subscribe? Please share your thoughts or questions in the comments below. Now make sure to watch my other videos in this series on how I converted this porch into a living space addition. Thanks for watching. I'm Joe Kistel.